Yesterday evening, we got an update on Packers corner Nate Hobbs and his knee injury. He had missed a couple different practices because of this knee injury, but there hadn't been any news that had come out about what the injury was, how severe it was, things like that, until last night when Bill Huber of Sports Illustrated put out an article sharing exactly what's happening. So I want to read part of that article here from Bill Huber. He said last night, "Subscribing to the notion that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, Green Bay Packers starting cornerback Nate Hobbs had a minor procedure done on his knee," a source told Packers on SI Monday evening. He could return in about 3 weeks, giving him time to get back in the swing of things for the regular season. In the second I saw that, it was right before I was about to head to sleep, and I thought to myself, all right, this isn't great. It's not great when the corner you brought in to replace Jair Alexander is dealing with a knee injury that required some type of surgery. Now, Huber does say that he could return in about 3 weeks. That would put him 3 weeks from today. That would be August 26th, which would still be 12 days before the Packers play their first game against the Detroit Lions on September 7th. And so this may not be, terrible news if everything goes according to plan. If he can get back by week 1 and things are fine, there's no complications, then it's like, okay, not the biggest deal in the world. But that's where in my mind, I'm like, is this going to be the last we hear of this knee injury once he returns? Or could there be potential complications, which is always a possibility? And then early this morning, ESPN reporter Rob Domofsky put out some more information about exactly what's happening here with this knee injury, adding to what Bill Huber said last night. So here is Rob Domofsky earlier this morning on ESPN says, Packers cornerback Nate Hobbs, who is signed this offseason to be one of the cornerstones of their defense, underwent knee surgery over the weekend, sources confirmed to ESPN, but could be back for the regular season opener September 7th against the Detroit Lions. Could be back. So it feels like it may not be a certainty. He goes on, Hobbs is expected to miss the remainder of training camp. However, Sports Illustrated was the first to report late Monday night that Hobbs had undergone a procedure. Sources on Tuesday told ESPN that the surgery was to repair a partial meniscus tear. The surgery took place Saturday at 7 a.m. and did not include any other complications, according to one source. Hobbs could have played with the injury, according to another source, but it could have possibly gotten worse, so the decision was made to take care of it immediately. And so I understand that if you're the Packers and you recognize that Nate Hobbs has this problem, it sounds like he could have potentially played through it, but then I guess you run the risk of getting into the season and maybe at some point things get worse, and then when you're in the season, and if you have to do that same type of surgery, he's going to miss, at least a few games most likely. And so I think it's probably wise to get ahead of it when you don't have any games in the preseason. Of course, you have the preseason games, but no regular season games. It's probably wiser to just sort of try to get everything figured out and settled before the regular season starts. And so this isn't great news. And maybe we get to week 1 and Nate Hobbs is totally fine. The surgery went well, and we never hear of another knee problem for Nate Hobbs. But in the back of my mind, just having these different experiences with different Packers players, it's like this is sort of the first part sometimes where you get this first information, and then 3 weeks later when you're maybe expecting a guy to come back, you hear that there's some other type of complication. And that's sort of the scenario that happened last year with Jair Alexander. Clearly two different scenarios, but it's almost like you think a guy's going to come back at some point, and then it just keeps pushing back. And I really hope that this doesn't happen with Nate Hobbs, but there is some type of unknown here. In this offseason, the Packers, they ended up making the decision to move on from Jair Alexander, letting him go and enter free agency, ends up signing with the Ravens in the past few months. And it sounded like the Packers just didn't really want to deal with the consistent injury problems with Jair Alexander. And it's unfortunate now that they're dealing with injury concerns with the corner they decide to bring in this offseason. And Nate Hobbs, the one concern with him when the Packers did sign him, the one risk was the fact that he has had injury problems for the past 3 seasons. He has missed 16 games in the past 3 years. He has missed more than 4 games each of the past 3 seasons. And, just looking at what Raiders fans were saying about Nate Hobbs, I was reading this one Reddit thread earlier today where a Packers fan had asked the Raiders fans in the thread, what do you guys think about Nate Hobbs? This was about when Hobbs was signed to the Packers, and they were saying he's a really solid cornerback, but he's had injury problems. So that clearly was a thing when he was with the Raiders. That was a consistent issue. And so I think when you sign that guy, the Packers had to know in the back of their mind that there was a risk. It's hard to know, though, depending on the different kinds of injuries, the likelihood of them suffering another type of injury, because Hobbs had multiple different kinds of injuries with the Raiders. He had an ankle injury. He broke his hand. He dealt with some illnesses as well. And so I don't think you can necessarily look at that and know for a fact he's going to miss time. But when you see a guy who's consistently missed time, there is that risk that may happen here in Green Bay. And I think the hope was, okay, hopefully that's behind him. But so far, now in training camp, he is dealing with that injury. And as I said, hopefully this is nothing to be concerned about a month from now. But at the same time, it's tough when you've seen a guy, miss a lot of games the past few years, and now you have another guy who is already missing time. And so I think now looking at this Packers corner room, I don't think it's the end of the world if Nate Hobbs were to miss a regular season game or multiple, if it were to get to that point, which I have no idea if it would, but I think they're fine if they can have Carrington Valentine outside, Keyshawn Nixon outside, and Javon Bullard in the slot. That's a group that they had majority of last season with Jair only playing in 7 games. And we saw against the Eagles, I think the secondary played a pretty solid day, and those were the guys they had out there. My only concern is if Keyshawn were then to go down with an injury if Nate Hobbs is out, or if Carrington Valentine were to go down with an injury when Nate Hobbs is out, what's the solution there? Could Bo Melton be good enough to fill in for that corner spot? I think it's a possibility based on what we've seen from camp. It looks like he's played pretty good football, and he's still early on playing corner here for the Packers in the NFL, so maybe he can do that. The Packers did just bring back Corey Ballentine, which I think might make more sense now in light of this Nate Hobbs injury. The Ballentine news came out maybe 3 or 4 p.m. yesterday, and then the Nate Hobbs injury news came out maybe 5 or so hours later. They let go of Gregory Jr., who had a little experience in the NFL, played in 10 games or so. And so it could be that because the Packers recognize that Hobbs is going to be down, I don't know if they have more information about exactly when they expect him to be back. I don't know if 3 weeks is like best case scenario, but maybe in the back of their minds, they're thinking it could be more like 5-6 weeks. It's just hard to know because we don't get every single detail regarding the injury. But with Corey Ballentine, at least you have a player that you saw in 2023 played a little more than 500 snaps. And so I think the Packers have some kind of confidence that he can at least be a solid depth piece. And so maybe that will give them some more confidence that, let's say Hobbs wasn't playing, and let's say Valentine went down or Keyshawn Nixon went down. I think that Ballentine with a B is good enough to fill in, and you're not terribly concerned. I don't think he's a top tier type corner. The Packers let him go in free agency. He got signed by the Colts. They released him the past week or so. But I think he could fill in for a game or two if you needed some more depth at corner. And the Packers do have a lot of other young cornerbacks like Kalen King, like Micah Robinson, that who knows, maybe they can take some steps forward and be good enough. But at this point, it's just unfortunate to be dealing with more injuries at cornerback after what the Packers experienced last offseason. That's going to be it for today's video. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe. You can also check out my NFL channel. I'll leave a link in the description down below. I put a video out on Caleb Williams and the Bears yesterday, so if you want to watch that, feel free to check that out. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.